Chiefs play in just a couple of days, and there are some bumps in the road to getting to the 53. What does it look like today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. You can make every single moment more if you get in there, and you can get $5 just for laying a $5 bet. You can get that trial for free for 3 weeks on Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's where you go to get started. We are going to get started. This is Chris Clark, my partner in crime over at Chiefs Corner. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL 33 and RGR Football. You can find us there. Make sure you go sub to Chris's Substack and my Substack and all the other things and the stuff, because we have a lot of information, especially this time of year. Paying attention to the rest of the league is what may be available on Cutdown Day, something we're going to talk about today as we preview what we think should be the 53-man roster that goes for that three-peat. We're going to get to the practice squad players that are going to be the on-call staff, basically. That's coming up later in the show. We're going to get to the defense and see if it can rebound coming up in a little bit. But we are starting at the top of the list like you always do with QB1 and the offensive side of the ball. What do you got?
I don't think there's any question. There's going to be two QBs on this roster, and it's going to be Mahomes and it's going to be Wentz, and it's not going to be anybody else. I like what I've seen from Oladokin, but he's not going to be on the roster. I don't think that they need to have him on the roster, and I think he's happy being on the practice squad and knowing he'll get a call up if needed. And he is their scout team QB as well. So I fully expect that that's the direction that's going to go.
Yeah, there we go, folks. No surprises. Thanks for being here. Like, sub, hit the bell, do the thing. We are free on every platform all the time, starting here on YouTube and getting out to Spotify and Apple Music, and anywhere you can get a free podcast. Not a whole lot of drama there. I completely agree with you. If you want drama, we'll put it out for you on the text line. That's where all the insiders hang out. Our locos, the everyday listeners, we love you guys. And we try to put it out as fast as we can over at 816-357-8781. Make sure you like and subscribe here on this channel and then go get to there. Pretty easy, the QB position, right? Then comes one of the more interesting ones for me. I'm going to go right. I agree with you completely on quarterbacks. I'm going right to the running backs. And right now, until this morning, I was really confident in this, that it's Pacheco, Steele, Prince, and CEH. And then Andy said something that made me nervous. I right now have 4 with the possibility of an IR designation for CEH. Where are you at?
I have 4 as well, but I have LRZ being my 4th with CEH getting an IR designation. I think that and this is going to play into my roster projection at another position, because I think they're going to look at LRZ as being their kick returner.
Okay. That's an interesting one as well. Can he pull double duty? Can he do multiple things to earn himself a roster spot? That does make sense. And if you were going to make a 1-for-1, even on the list that I had, if CH did go to IR, I think LRZ would be my choice as well. And I do think that the staff is going to feel that way on top of that. The question becomes is, does he go? And is it that serious? We just don't know. And Andy didn't make me feel particularly good about them knowing the direction that's going either. So one thing I feel more adamant about is that I think Hollywood Brown is likely to go, in my opinion, to IR for the first couple of weeks of the season. Designated on Cutdown Day. So that leaves 6 other players at my position. I have 6 going on to the roster with him going to IR. It would be 7 otherwise. Rice, Worthy, Watson, super simple. I actually have Ross and Hardman making it with more, with Remigio and Tony on the outside looking in. How do you see the wide receivers?
I don't think Brown's going to IR. They'd lose him for 4 games, so I don't think that's going to be something that they're going to look at. Reed talked about it today, saying, or was it today? I guess it was today, saying that it's possible that he could be back for the regular season, or maybe that was yesterday. Maybe that was in a conversation before practice yesterday. So we'll see. I don't think he ends up on IR, so I have Brown, Rice, and Worthy as the top 3. Watson is number 4. Sky Moore is number 5. And because I went with LRZ at the 4th running back and your kick returner, I went with Justin Ross as the 6th wide receiver. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But the the big thing there and the big question with Ross is, can he contribute enough on special teams? Because the reality is that sixth guy has to.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you're taking what I think is probably the more likely scenario. I'm trying to take the more in case of emergency, right? I'm going to take the worst case scenario and build my roster that way so that I know what happens. Because if it comes down to it and Brown doesn't go to IR, I'm probably going to bump Ross, keep Moore and Hardman as 5 and 6. But you're saying Hardman is out for you in this scenario, along with Tony and Remigio. Yep.
And I'm saying Hardman's out, and I didn't ever think I would say that Tony's out, but it just seems like they've soured on him. And after the game that he had against the Lions, I just can't see that he makes the roster. So we'll see how that ends up. The real question when you start getting into the wide receivers is, what do they do with McCole Hardman? And one of the arguments I would make is that McCole Hardman is the easiest person to get on the practice squad. He does not go through waivers, and he can choose where he wants to go. And they can bring him back for the first 2 weeks of the season to replace what they have with Hollywood Brown. And then maybe you make a different move after the first 2 weeks, because once you get your roster set early on, it usually kind of settles down. You can have people take people from the roster, but it doesn't happen near as much.
Yeah. And that's fair. That's an educated gamble that you always work out with a veteran player before it ever happens. So you got to be confident in it. That makes perfect sense to me. I could see that scenario working out as well. That brings us to the tight ends here as we're running down the offense. We're going to get to the defense coming up in a little bit here, folks. This is where we differ. I have 9 offensive linemen going to this 53-man roster, and I have 4 tight ends. I left Irv Smith on here so they could go 13 personnel in case my scenario comes through and Brown goes to IR, and they have enough bodies at tight end to do that. Irv makes it with the big 3, and then at O-line, I have Taylor Smith, Humphrey, Tooney, Suamataia, and then I kept everyone, Morris, Norzad Caliendo, and Niang, with Hansen and Driscoll going to the practice squad. How do you see that?
So I don't agree with you on the tight ends. I think that Irv Smith Jr. hasn't shown enough to where he deserves a roster spot at this point. I think that it's a guy that if they really want him on this roster, they could keep him if they want, or they could put him on the practice squad. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And that's another situation where if you think you need an extra tight end for that game, you bring him up for the game. I don't think you're going to dress 4 tight ends in any game. So I have a hard time believing that they'll go that direction. We'll see. When you look at the offensive line, I agree with you on all of them, except for I don't have Niang. I have Driscoll. And I actually put Hansen on my roster as well, mainly because they drafted him. Now, whether or not they're going to end up being able to keep that, the whole thing with CEH maybe going to IR kind of gave me a little bit of extra room. So I thought they drafted the guy. They liked him enough to draft him. And that's going to be somebody they probably want to develop. I do think that there's a chance he could end up on the practice squad. Driscoll as well. With Niang, I'm to a point where I don't see the flexibility and the ability to get out in space at times. And I'm not talking like running and doing screens. I'm talking about just getting to the edge. If somebody's out past the tight end, that's a problem in this offense. So I don't think that that's something that they would continue with. So to me, I'd give Driscoll a chance, and I think that they are going to want to develop him because he has the ability to do some things that, you look at Suamataia and the way he played in that game against Detroit. And I'm not calling Driscoll Suamataia, but the way he can move is similar, and that's something that you cannot teach. It's you either have it or you don't. Driscoll has it, and he's huge. So to me, I think there's value there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You cannot fake the athletic matrix, and that's why it exists. At the end of the day, you can't train it up. So I understand where you're coming from. I went a little bit more conservative. I know everybody's shocked by that. And the practice squad implications could be bigger than we thought. We're going to get to that later in the show. But we got to take a look at the defensive side. They have to pull their weight again, and they might just be able to do that. That's coming up next. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now they have a chance for you to do exactly what I do every single week. They have something a little bit different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube base plan account, all you got to do is watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. No problem. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make sure, if you need fantasy football help, that you make your second listen after listening to us first, which we very much appreciate. The Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast with Vinny Iyer. You will dig it. It's part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Every single day is what this defense has to do, and they got to have the horses to do it. Which side do you want to start on?
I might as well start it with the defensive line. Mine are pretty straightforward. I actually had an article on my locks for the roster earlier this morning on Chiefs Corner, and Jones, Noddy, Karlaftis, and Dana are going to be your starters. Pennell, FAU, and Wharton are also going to be on the roster. And then I also have them keeping Farrell, Herring, and Truman Jones. Obviously, that would mean Omenihu goes to IR, or I guess it's PUP, which is not any kind of surprise at this point.
Yeah, I have Omenihu on the PUP as well. The only difference that I really have is I don't have Farrell or Jones on it, but I do have Dickerson. And I think that that's going to work for immediacy. Can they rotate that afterwards? Probably. I don't think they're going to have trouble getting either Farrell or Lovett to the practice squad, so I'm banking on that. Is there a chance somebody picks him up? We will see.
This coming from the guy that was really pissed when they lost Keandre Coburn last year. Just kind of find that funny. No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just going
to keep taking the same look and see how wrong I am every year.
Well, the way I look at it, Dickerson isn't going anywhere. And they traded for Farrell last year. So to me, I think that trumps value a little bit. You can always bring up Dickerson from the practice squad if you want him to play and you want to sit Farrell for a game. But that's the way I have it going right now. I just don't see great value in Dickerson. They may trust him and they may want him on the practice squad and they may be able to bring him up. But if you've got 4 guys that can already play the position, how many reps is he really going to get?
True. The return of Derek Noddy, who Andy Reid said a bunch of the guys that are out currently are going to be ready to play, including Noddy, including Tooney, including Chris Jones, a slew of them. I'm just not sure how many reps he's going to give you against the Ravens and the Bengals in particular. And so that's where I'm thinking along those lines. But we will find that out.
I will say this, with the Ravens specifically, a guy that can stuff the run, I think, is going to be a huge value. I mean, you look at who they're going to be going up against, an extra big body in there that you can put in there on 3rd and shorts because you're going to be going up against Derrick Henry. That's where I really think the value could be in that type of scenario.
Yeah, and as we've been talking a lot of the offseason, Mike Pennell's going to be there for that reason as well, to give you probably a double bump there because Skinny Lamar is going to be running around as well. You're going to have to hit the edges, and you're going to have to be able to contain Lamar. That comes down to the linebackers and the safeties. Linebackers, I kept 5 on this roster. I didn't go 6 because I think you can get guys to the practice squad. I need 5 guys that I'm confident can walk in and play if somebody turns an ankle on a freak play, right? So it's Bolton, Trank, Chanel, easy. I do have Cochran and Jones making this roster, and that's it. You?
Same. I really would like to see Curtis Jacobs on this roster. I think that he has ability, but I think it's a little too too late is what I'm afraid of. Although he did grade out as, I think, the 2nd best player against the Lions on Sunday. So first best was Cornell Powell, interestingly enough, but so be it.
It is what it is on a play that he wasn't even supposed to be in on. So, hey, kudos to him for making the most of it. Now, I'm going to flip it just a little bit because I do think the middle is the concern here. So I want to look at safety first because I did something maybe a little unexpected. I moved Shamari Connor back to safety because I'm not sure of where Reed's at and whether he's going to be 100% or how many snaps he can give you. So I took 4 at the safety spot with Reed, Cook, Hicks, and Connor, and I left it at that. Where did you see it?
Exact same.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what Connor is going to do. They've moved him all over the field. Maybe they want to have Hicks out there and get him some playing time too. And it sounds like Reed should be back for the regular season. But again, not having played all preseason, you're going to wonder, is he going to have, an issue where he's not going to be able to go the entire game? I would hope that's not going to be the case, but Connor has played very well when he's played safety, and he struggled a little bit at the slot corner role. So I'll be interested to see how that turns out. But yeah, I've got 4.
I like it. So by my count, we each have 3 specialists. Although the whole signing of somebody to replace Winchester just for this week was interesting to me. Let's hope that he does have the AC, the other end of the sternoclavicular joint. We'll see how he recovers, but we both have those 3. So that brings us to your corner group. What do you have there?
So that's where it gets a little bit interesting. Your top 4 are going to be McDuffie, Watson, Williams, and Johnson. I think that those guys are safe. I think they're definitely going to be on the team. This is where it gets a little different. I still have Kelvin Joseph. I think that he's probably that 5th guy in the room right now. And then I have Christian Roland Wallace.
Well, it's funny because, folks, we do not plan this out ahead of time. We learn each other's lists as we go here, and you have the exact same group in the exact same order I do. So I think we're seeing things on the same wavelength. We'll see if we're matching Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. But let me ask you this, because we're going to get to the practice squatters next. Who's the guy that you had to debate to get those last 2 guys on here?
I really had trouble figuring out what I was going to do at wide receiver. You look at that position, and it is just so all over the place. There's things that you like in practice from a guy like Justin Ross, and then you watch some of the game film and you go watch what he does in the game, and there's taking plays off. There's not hitting a block when you were probably one of the biggest wide receivers on the field. That makes you wonder whether or not they're going to continue to go that direction. But it's the talent that's there that I think is such a big deal. And when you look at keeping Ross on the roster, then you release Remigio, who I think they want to have as a returner, but LRZ has been ahead of Remigio the entire time. So at that point, if you put CEH on IR, I do think you have the ability to keep LRZ, even though I don't know that they really thought he was going to make the roster.
Can I just?
It's interesting to me because
can I make a request?
What's that?
I need Andy and Veach to not hit me with any more 3-name players, okay? Because LRZ, CEH, and the trade between the 2 of them is driving me nuts. Just saying.
Yeah, well, LRZ, I think, is going to be somebody that I would have thought that they would just put on the practice squad. But the fact that it's CEH, they're even discussing whether or not they can get him on IR tells me that there is more to it than we know. And I do think that that's a possibility, is that that's going to end up happening. Obviously, it's also possible that instead of LRZ, they would go with a guy like Irv Smith. And then in that situation, maybe Sky Moore is your kick returner. He did pretty decent on Saturday. So lots of different ways you can go. The question is who's going to be your punt returner. And that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think there's other guys that can do it as well.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That brings us to, what are the reserves? How are you building this practice squad? And what could change in terms of acquisitions? That's coming up next. Make sure, if you need 24/7 coverage, to check out Locked On NFL today, because it's free all the time, everywhere. Anytime you're ready, it's on for you here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV at Locked On NFL today. I'm really torn here because some of the decisions put a couple of guys that I like in jeopardy. Obviously, Remigio. Kupp is a guy I don't think anybody's coming for, but I'm glad he should make it to the practice squad pretty comfortably. Hansen I had on there. I know you had him on the roster. So let's start there. The way that you built the practice squad, what offensive linemen are there in case there's an injury?
That's going to be tough because you look at what I did. Maybe you bring back, Godric I think is going to be on there, but I do think that Godric is going to be their international player, and he's not going to count against the 16. So that would give you a 17th. So Godric would be on that list. Maybe they bring back a guy like McDowell or Torres. I'm not sure which direction they would really lean in that regard. McDowell looks like he has the ability to play multiple different positions because he's listed at both left tackle and at center. So maybe that would be the direction they go. I think that they could look to try to bring in somebody to add to that offensive line group. A backup player type to bring into that offensive line group. Check the waiver wire and see who comes in. Obviously, and this kind of goes without saying in my mind, I do think that Oladokin is going to be there, so I don't think QB is going to be an issue. Running back, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Keontae Ingram and maybe even Amani Bailey, though we haven't seen much from Bailey at all.
Right. I'm building it up the same way. I want some spryness back there. I actually hit LRZ not making it, so I had the two of them as the running backs on there, Oladokin as well. I have Remigio on there. I was hoping in the back of my head, and everybody can make fun of me if they want, but I still feel that Bailey Zappi got chipped last week and should have been able to drive for a touchdown. I'd like to see him as a backup to Mahomes. So I'd like to see them make an acquisition there. I think the running back spot, despite Bailey and what I have as LRZ, is still ripe for a possible pickup of another cut player at the position group, especially one with that higher top end gear like LRZ. Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, maybe. It's so tough because you only have 16 spots, so you're really going to have to figure out where you're going to go. In my scenario, I would say Irv Smith is probably somebody I think that they come back and try to bring back to the practice squad. If he's not able to come back, then it would be Baylor Cup in that regard. I'm curious to see what they do with Owen Carney just as an added rusher, because I don't think that Thompson is going to be available this year. So they're going to have a rusher of some sort on the practice squad. I don't know who that's going to be, but Carney did have a splash play. So is it something that they're going to be interested in bringing him back? Fabian Lovett, obviously, I think would come back. Curtis Jacobs, I would love to have on the practice squad. I think that would be, get him in here and see if maybe in a year he could supplant Cochran or Cam Jones, even though I know you really like Cam Jones. But
yeah, I mean, but if you get beat out, you get beat out.
Right.
I like a guy because he has potential to be a contributor. If he doesn't pan out to that, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I do have Montreal Washington as well as Jaron Hayek making the practice squad with a possibility of Cornell Powell. I don't know if that touchdown's enough, and I don't know if the career arc is enough for him to stick around, get some younger players that are making plays. So I had those two as well. And then jumping to that problem child, the one that I was debating getting into the corner group was Taylor, because they've played him a ton and they've gotten a lot of looks. And I do believe we both had it right with CRW and Joseph ahead of him. I think the staff might see him as a guy that could do some work for them. But I have Haddon, Nick Jones, Miles Battle, and Taylor all on my practice squad. You?
How many players do you have on your practice squad? They only have 16.
I have 16. I totally forgot about the international designation.
Okay, well, fair enough. It's going to be tough. I'm not exactly sure where they go with the practice squad. I could see Taylor on it. I do think that if they release Haddon, which I expect that they'll try to bring him back if he wants to come back. Well, actually, he would go through waivers. So if he's able to come back, they bring him back. Battles are going to be an interesting one because he does have length. That's another thing you can't teach. So is it something where they think that they can get something out of him in the next couple of years? And Merritt is fantastic at working with corners. So if Battle has the ability, I think Merritt could get out of him. Nick Jones would make a lot of sense as well. The reality is, and you start looking at how this plays out for this team and this roster. And last one, I think Deion Bush is another guy that they may look at on the practice squad. The thing that really looking at this, and Fabian Lovett Sr., I don't think I said that one. Sorry.
I thought you had, but that's fine.
When you start looking at this, you start looking at some of the guys that we're talking about releasing. We're talking about Kamal Haddon. We're talking about Nick Jones. Both those guys were draft picks. I mean, you're talking about Hansen. That guy was a draft pick too. Problem is, you get to this point where you have a Super Bowl roster year after year after year. You're only going to have so many roster spots. And you end up getting in a situation where maybe you could have gotten somebody better that is, with one of your draft picks, but I don't really care if they miss on 5th round and 7th round picks. I mean, you take your shot. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If you still have people that can beat them out, you're better for it because competition is going to get things to go in a better place. So, and you look at who they have making this roster. Carson Steele, I know you really liked him coming out of college, but I don't think most people would have figured he had a chance of making the roster before OTAs and before training camp. And then you're in a situation where now it looks like he's a lock. So you're going to have those guys that step in as UDFAs that can step in and take jobs. And that's what you want. So the way I look at it,
it crumbles.
Yeah. And the way I look at it this way: Worthy, Suamataia, Wiley, and Hicks. Those are all 4 potential starters. Maybe not this year. Obviously not this year for some of them, but all 4 of those guys are potential starters. If you don't, and Norzad may end up being a potential starter as well. We don't know. We'll see. So you have 5 potential starters out of 8 picks. I think you got to feel pretty good about that if you're Brett Veach. And I do think that there's a lot of quality players there. So like I said, I don't really care if he misses on some of the back end picks. It's going to happen. And last year you went and got Nick Jones. If he's not going to make the roster this year, you got better. That's the reality.
Yeah. I agree. I think Hansen will make it back, and I do think as the decisions get made on the offensive line next year, there might be a little spot for him there. We'll see what happens. And for UK State fans, I didn't leave Echo Boydo out on purpose. I think if released, he will get picked up by another team and get a better contract than a practice squad player will. So that's my expectation and why I didn't have him on my practice squad either. I think he gets a job.
Fair enough. I'll be curious to see. One of the things that I love about preseason week number 3 is you get to see all these guys that you're not going to get to see play. Some of them may never play again. That's part of the reality of this game. But this might be their last chance to do anything in the NFL. But it's still a lot of fun to go watch those guys and see what they're able to do. So I'm looking forward to the game on Thursday. There's going to be a lot to talk about after that game, and cuts are on the 27th. So we have a little bit over a week before you have to have final cuts, I believe. So we're going to have some time, but we'll have a live show after the game on Thursday night, like we always do. That will be our Friday show, and we will start talking cuts as soon as we start getting information.
And we'll probably pepper them out. I think a couple of veterans probably get let go early, is my guess. And then, Noah Veach will probably come down to the wire. So we'll have information for you all week long. We're going to get Matt Derrick's take tomorrow, and then we're going to get you ready for this last preseason game coming up. So make sure you like and sub and hit the bell. Here on YouTube, get subbed on Spotify and Apple Music, and anywhere else you can get a free show, you got us. And if you want that much more, you want the breaking news, and you want it before we get to a point where we can record the show, make sure you sign up at 816-357-8781. Thanks for being with us today. We do appreciate you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. The preseason is almost wrapped, and we are almost ready for the Baltimore Ravens and the three-peat run, so get ready. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.